crown dripping in gold, paid for with blood, no one was ever allowed to see. Picture this: a kingdom so wealthy that its palace floors were laced with silver, while beneath those very floors, thousands of human beings were worked until their bodies simply gave out. This is not fiction. This is a pattern repeated across centuries of human history, and today, we expose one of its most terrifying examples. Behind every gleaming throne room, every jeweled crown, every banquet that lasted for days, there was a mine, a quarry, a field, a place where the people who built that wealth were never meant to be seen, never meant to be counted, never meant to be remembered. Royal ledgers recorded gold by the pound. They did not record the dead. Historians who later opened those forgotten archives found something unimaginable: numbers. So staggering that entire regions had been emptied of their working population within a single generation. The palace called it prosperity. The people called it a grave. So how does a kingdom build heaven for a few by building hell for everyone else? Stay with us. What you're about to learn will change the way you look at every gilded crown in every museum you'd ever visited. To understand this kingdom, you have to understand its geography of greed. Its wealth came from the ground: silver veins, gold seams, and salt deposits so rich that foreign merchants sailed for months just to trade at its ports. The royal court called it a golden age. Chroniclers of the time described banquets with 100 dishes, courtiers dressed in imported silk, and palaces expanded year after year with newly discovered treasure. But every ounce of that treasure had to come out of the earth by hand, and the hands doing the digging were never the hands wearing the jewels. Entire villages were conscripted under royal decree. Men were pulled from their homes and sent underground for months at a time, into shafts so narrow that some never stood upright again. Officials kept meticulous records of the gold extracted, but the workers themselves were logged only as numbers: interchangeable, replaceable, disposable. Above ground, the court insisted the kingdom's success was a sign of divine favor. Priests blessed the mines. Poets wrote of endless abundance. Meanwhile, letters from regional administrators, quietly buried in royal archives for centuries, described something the crown never wanted spoken aloud: villages so depleted of men that fields went unplanted, and famine crept in behind the wealth like a shadow. And then, historians uncovered something far worse than exhaustion or hunger, something the palace had gone to extraordinary lengths to erase from every official record. Here is what the palace tried to bury forever. Beneath the mountains that fed the crown's treasury, workers weren't just laboring. They were dying at a rate that should have ended the operation entirely. Toxic mineral dust filled the tunnels. Ventilation was an afterthought. Cave-ins were common, and when they happened, bodies were often left exactly where they fell, because retrieving them cost more than replacing the worker. Surviving records, the ones that escaped destruction, describe conscription quotas so brutal that some communities sent boys as young as 12 underground, because there simply weren't enough adult men left alive to fill the demand. And here is the moment that redefines everything. Modern researchers analyzing skeletal remains near these ancient mining sites found something the royal chronicles never once mentioned: evidence of systemic malnutrition, crushing injuries, and average lifespans among laborers that were decades shorter than the nobility living just miles away in marble halls. The gold in the crown and the bones in the ground came from the same hands. While the court staged festivals celebrating the kingdom's endless riches, petitions from desperate laborers begging for relief were confiscated and destroyed. Administrators were under strict orders to keep any hint of suffering from ever reaching royal ears. The wealth wasn't just built on labor. It was built on silence enforced by law. Anyone caught spreading word of the conditions in the mines faced imprisonment, or worse. This wasn't an accident of history. It was policy, a calculated system where extraordinary luxury for a chosen few required the deliberate, sustained, and hidden suffering of everyone else. And it worked, for generations, because the people at the top made absolutely certain no one outside the mines would ever find out. Eventually, the truth did what buried truths always do. It surfaced. Traveling merchants, foreign diplomats, and later, independent chroniclers began documenting what the royal court had spent generations hiding. Regions once celebrated as models of prosperity were revealed, in outside accounts, as landscapes of exhaustion and early death. Public opinion, slow, but eventually unstoppable, began to turn. Some rulers faced open rebellion from populations who had simply had enough. Others saw their kingdoms weakened from within, their labor force so depleted that the very wealth machine they built collapsed under its own cruelty. Justice, when it came, was almost never proportional to the suffering. The nobility who profited rarely faced consequences in their lifetimes. Many died in comfort, remembered in official histories as visionaries and builders. The laborers who died in the tunnels were rarely named at all. It's a pattern that should feel uncomfortably familiar, because it is. Historians studying supply chains today point directly back to this era as an early blueprint. Extract resources, obscure the human cost, protect the image of the powerful at any expense. The mines are gone now. The palaces are museums. But the underlying mechanism, profit built on invisible suffering, protected by silence and distance, didn't disappear with this kingdom. It evolved. Today it wears different names: forced labor in global supply chains, resource extraction in regions the wider world never sees, workers whose conditions are hidden behind corporate silence rather than royal decree. The crown changed. The core cruelty did not. Every empire built on hidden suffering eventually learns the same lesson. You cannot bury the truth forever. The earth remembers, the bones remember, and history, sooner or later, insists on being told. What this kingdom teaches us isn't just about gold or crowns or ancient mines. It's about how easily comfort convinces the powerful to look away from the cost of that comfort. It's a warning still worth heeding, because the mechanisms of hidden exploitation didn't end with this dynasty. They simply changed shape. So here's the question worth sitting with tonight. How many of the comforts in your own life are quietly resting on suffering your life and simply never been shown? Tell us what you think in the comments below. And if this kind of history, the kind they don't teach you in school, is something you want more of, consider subscribing, because the darkest chapters of our past are still waiting to be uncovered.